Hi, welcome to another episode of Hot Takes with me, the Silver Fox. One of the SNP's biggest problems is its ideology. It fervently believes that it must follow everything it says to the letter. And so when they say they are anti-nuclear, they mean everything. And that includes the nuclear submarines at Faslane. However, reality has this horrible habit of destroying ideologies almost immediately once you start looking at the facts and the repercussions. The repercussions of something are not normally what the SNP looks like. They never ever play the game of consequences. But it seems, finally, they may well have seen reason. There's been discussions on the future of the naval base at Faslane, and they may slowly be coming round to the idea that in actual fact it would be a really bad idea to get rid of it. We're going to have a look at this article, see what's going on. But although this is going on in one aspect, there is another aspect which I will touch on, which is equally serious, but in a different way. But anyway, we'll have a look at this. Here goes. So, SNP Trident confusion as Pete Wishart-led committee fears nuclear removal will have serious implications. They fear that, do they? People have been saying this ever since the SNP announced they wanted to be nuclear free and get rid of the naval base. They don't like it. But it is very serious. So the Scottish Affairs Committee warned about the impact of removing the nuclear deterrent despite the Nats' opposition to the weapons. They can oppose it all they like. There's not really a lot they want to do because they want to stay in all these institutions. We want to be part of a nuclear-free group. We want this, that, and the other. They want all this. Now the funny thing is, and there's a side argument which I will come to, if they want to deliberately go, right, we're no nukes, we want nothing to do with nukes, we want every nuke out, that's fine. That's their option. That's their option. However, there are implications. So the SNP's policy on nuclear weapons has been thrown into disarray after a Commons committee admitted there would be serious implications of scrapping Trident. The Scottish Affairs Committee called on the UK to reassess its defence presence in Scotland in light of new threats in the most northerly part of the globe. The committee is chaired by the veteran Nat MP Pete Wishart, and the SNP opposes nuclear weapons and wants to see Trident scrapped. Well, if they were an independent country, it would be nothing to do with them. Trident wouldn't be scrapped, it would just simply be moved. We're not going to scrap Trident. But the report said, whilst not all members of the committee support this view of maintaining Trident, we do recognise the serious implications for the UK and NATO should the nuclear fleet ever be removed from Faslane. Scottish Conservative leader Douglas Ross, who is a member of the committee, said the report should see the Nats change their position or change their opposition to Trident. He says the fact that the SNP MPs unanimously agreed with the whole committee to recognise the serious implications for the UK and NATO should the nuclear fleet ever be removed from Faslane must herald a shift in the SNP away from the current reckless defence policy. In other words, what he's saying is now that they've all looked at what the implications are on this committee, of which there are SNP members, it must be seen that they now agree that it is required. You see, one of the problems is if Scotland wanted it independent, became independent, and then said, right, you're going to have to take Trident away, we don't want Trident in Scotland because we're anti-nuke, they wouldn't then be allowed to join NATO, number one. Number two, the EU, and this is a separate video for a separate day, and it's quite wrong, but the EU wants to have its own nuclear weapons. Think how dangerous that is. You have an unelected elite at the top of the EU. Nobody elects them, not the commissions. They don't get elected in. The parliament that you do send MEPs to are only a rubber stamping organisation. They cannot generate laws. The laws are only generated by the commission, and then they're told to go down to the EU Parliament to vote on them. But it's a powerless, toothless organisation. And then they want what was basically a private cabal of unelected officials having their own nuclear weapons. Now, that goes in the face of the Non-Proliferation Treaty. Couldn't say the word there, getting over my own teeth. But it's also the fact that it's against international law for any organisation other than a sovereign country to possess nuclear weapons. Any weapon of mass destruction may only be owned by sovereign countries. And since there's only one weapon of mass destruction that is allowed, nuclear, that means that the EU cannot, in law, have one. But that wouldn't stop them saying, "Oh well, we've formed a European army now, and we want it to be a nuclear army," and then say force France, who are the only known or at least acknowledged nuclear power in Europe. France would have to give its authorisation codes to the EU. This is madness. But if Scotland wanted to join the EU and stood on an anti-nuclear stance, they would be joining a nuclear power. Again, goes against everything the SNP is saying, because lunacy. Anyway, the report was published on Friday, with the committee saying a strategy on protecting offshore infrastructure is needed in the wake of Nord Stream sabotage. After conducting an inquiry on defence in Scotland, the cross-party committee called for clarity on how the military presence could be scaled up in response to potential future threats in the Arctic and the strategically important Greenland, Iceland, UK gap, GIUC. As well as an increasing Russian presence, China is taking a growing interest in Arctic politics, even though it's nowhere near the bloody Arctic. It needs to get its nose out. And climate change is leading to new trade routes opening up in the high north, which is loosely defined as the Arctic region and the seas surrounding it, including part of the North Atlantic. Evidence from the Human Security Centre stated the RAF had too few Poseidon maritime patrol jets and early warning aircraft. So basically, there's a rising threat that's going on from the top of Scotland across to Iceland and Greenland, and Scotland wants to pull away virtually the only thing they've got that can go up and patrol that area with any level of efficiency, our nuclear fleet. And it wants to leave the nuclear behind. Now, that's all very fine, but then an independent Scotland couldn't join NATO, couldn't join the EU, because its policies are anti-nuclear, and the EU wants to be a nuclear power. So it can't join either of those. If only there was an organisation it could join in which it could freely trade and, be part of a democratic process. Who would have thought it? Amazing, isn't it? Now, of course, the other thing is, if you do lift the Trident submarine out, and let's say put it down into Portsmouth, for example, thousands of jobs, thousands of very highly paid, highly technical jobs would leave. All that money leaving Faslane and the local area, the economy would collapse. The Scottish Government could never recover from that. The millions of, well, if you think billions, in fact, that gets pumped into that area on a regular basis, suddenly gone. And going down. People at Portsmouth will love it. Wow, yeah. Economy in Portsmouth, boom time. People in Faslane, miserable lives. And then they will just look at the SNP and go, "You did this." That's what they want. The SNP sit there and they claim blah, blah, blah because we want to look virtuous. And then reality slaps them in the face with a wet fish. And they go, "Ooh, maybe it isn't a good idea after all, because they're all morons." Well, now Pete Wishart, who sits on that committee, voted to acknowledge the issue. So if Wishart can accept the fact that Trident is necessary, there's hope for everyone else. They basically don't have enough planes to patrol, and so they need to put out a naval force, and that's it. What does Scotland want? It wants to be taken seriously as an independent nation. Oh yes, we can do this if we're independent. I mean, the one saving grace is Scotland. You're never going to be stupid enough to vote for the SNP to take you out of the United Kingdom. Just look around at what the damage is under them as part of the United Kingdom. Can you imagine how bad Scotland would be if they were running it seriously and with that level of corruption and criminology? It is amazing. And I meant to say criminality. Criminology is an entirely different thing. But it is absolutely stunning. And it's no wonder people in Scotland go, no. Anyway, I'm going to stop there and come up. Another example of how they get things wrong. They don't do the thinking process, do they, the SNP? They go, what sounds good? What makes us look good? Oh, we'll do this. People don't like nukes. Let's get rid of nukes. I think you'll find people do like nukes. People like feeling safe in their bed. People like being part of a country that has such a deterrent that no one will really push us to the limit. People like belonging to a country that does have the ability to strike back. We are a scorpion. We are small, but we have a sting in our tail. And that gives us power. One of the reasons why Britain is a permanent member of the United Nations Security Council is simply by presence of having nukes. Scotland, if it was an independent country, wouldn't be on the UN's security panel. That's for sure. Too small. Too insignificant as an independent country. And of course, with having virtually no defence force of its own, that just leaves that whole area open. And how are they going to patrol the seas? It would be their responsibility. It's their shoreline. So they got to go out and patrol those seas. How are they going to maintain the security and integrity of their country if they can't even stop enemy ships from going through their waters? Madness. Ask the SNP this. They haven't got an answer. Like so many things, they haven't got an answer for anything once you start asking intelligent and difficult questions. Because they only exist up here in the air, in the ether. Little bright ideas twinkling around. No one's down at the ground doing the hard work, doing the thinking. Anyway, I shall stop there. Thank you very much for watching. If you like what you see here on the channel, please hit the subscribe button, ring the bell, leave a like, leave a comment, please share the video. And until next time, stay safe, stay well, and remember, the SNP don't really care. They don't care about your safety, and they don't care about you. Bye.